Okie so welcome back to Power Rankings after the third week of the NFL, and we're seeing two teams with a bye this week, and so that's gonna start becoming a thing where the bye weeks kick in. I always wondered, is it worse to have the bye week earlier in the year than it is to have it later? Do you want it right around the middle? Inquiring minds want to know. Starting off this week's Power Rankings, 32. They're being outscored 133 to 16, so Miami definitely belongs in 32nd. Interestingly enough, they're against the Chargers this coming week. So, Chargers, if you're going to wake up, now's a good time, because if you lose against Miami, that'll pretty much do it for your playoff hopes already. Number 31, 0-2-1 is their record. They've been outscored 88 to 64, and that's the Cardinals. So no change in 32 or 31. They stay exactly where they were. And the funny thing is, last week when I did this, I thought, maybe I'm being too tough on the Cardinals. But no. 31st, they're winless in their first three. I'm okay with where they're at. That being said, I know there's some teams that are being rated a lot lower among the winless teams. And it's funny because, I looked at a couple of different power rankings from today. And I did mine before I looked at anybody else's, and I thought, geez, there's some real reactionary stuff going on here that after week 3, some teams are being really kind of punished, and I'm not doing that with mine. I'm trying not to anyways. Number 30, they're 0-3. They've lost 94 to 63 combined, and that's Washington. They had a game last night against the Bears, and it was a predictable result. It definitely buoyed the numbers of Chicago's offense and their defense as well, in that the Washington team only scored 15 points. So it's another one of those years for Washington. And if you're a fan, 0-3. On Tim and Sid yesterday, Tim apparently went through the numbers, and you have a 3% chance over the last decade, if you start out winless in your first 3, of making the playoffs. So for these teams, the odds of a playoff, it's pretty much gone. Number 29, also 0-3. Oh, I should mention, Arizona is versus Seattle this week. And Washington is going to be at the New York Giants, who all of a sudden could be back in the mix. If the Giants win again next week, they could be back in the mix. And Washington is down one spot from last week. Also down one spot from last week, being outscored 67 to 46 over their 3 losses. Denver. So the once proud Broncos, 0-3. Again, the 3% thing about not being able to get into the playoffs. And I don't see any reason to think Denver's going to reverse that trend anytime soon. It's we're already into some games for these teams where it's kind of sort of done. Denver is versus Jacksonville this week, so Denver can actually pick up a win this week. They're at home against Jacksonville. Although, Jacksonville, they could have been 2-1. And so Jacksonville, who are currently 1-2, they really could have been 2-1. Could have happened. Number 28, also down one spot from last week. And going to Pittsburgh this week, which is normally a bloodbath, they've been outscored 83 to 54 at Cincinnati. As a Bengals fan, yeah, that's about right. Yeah, that's about right. It's about where I would have figured they'd be right now. And I feel bad for Andy Dalton. Dalton's a good quarterback. The Bengals are a bad team. So hopefully Dalton finds a place where he can win at some point. Number 27, also down one spot from last week. They've been outscored 70 to 33. And I could have put the Jets down as low as 31. And honestly, between 27 and 31, you guys can come up with your own numbers and justify them. I just don't see that these teams have played well enough to be moving up in the power rankings. I can't. I can't have a team that's been winless moving up. It just doesn't make any sense to me. Number 26, also winless, 0-3 at home against Cincinnati this week. They've been outscored 85 to 49, and that's Pittsburgh. But I do think that with Roethlisberger out, I do think quarterbacking potentially gets better for Pittsburgh. There were some encouraging signs this week. They didn't get blown out. and they had chances to win that game, and they just couldn't quite get it done. And now this week they're at home against the Cincinnati Bengals, which means that's going to be a game of the week right there. 2-0-3 teams going at it. I'm sure everybody's going to be clamoring to watch that game. Number 25, moving up 5 spots from last week. And they're at home against Washington this week. They've been outscored 94-63. But boy howdy, what a difference the quarterback position can make. Now, I'm not going to get on the bandwagon of let's just, love the new kid. But it is remarkable what a difference a week will make. And now, like I said, they're at home against Washington. The New York Giants can even the record at 2-2 and could potentially find themselves up into a position around here next week. And then who knows, right? They're not going to catch Dallas. That's not going to happen. However, wild card, you just never know. 9-7 can get you a wild card. It can happen. If they go to 2-2, who knows? Again, a new quarterback seems to have made a big difference for them. All due respect to Eli Manning, may very well be that time. Number 24, down 5 spots from last week. And these guys are going to Indianapolis. They're 1-2. They've been outscored 78-48, and that's the Raiders. Optimism was high after week 1 for the Oakland Raiders. That's been replaced by the Raiders. It's just that's sort of the way that works sometimes. They're 1-2, and if they can go into this week with the right mindset, they could come out of Indianapolis with a win, but they have to. If they drop to 1-3, that's probably going to do it for them. So, a 2-2 record, not bad. 1-3, you're in some trouble. I love football for this. I love that every week makes a difference. Every week matters. Every game matters. Number 23, moving up 2 spots from last week and going to Denver. They've been outscored 60-58, and it's Jacksonville. Jacksonville is 1-2. As I said, they could have been 2-1. They might be a team that, as this season rolls along, they might be this year's Houston Texans. The Texans started out 0-3 last year and ended up making the playoffs against all odds, as I've stated. And Jacksonville, to me, kind of feels like they could be that team as well. Where with the right, just the bounces going the right way, maybe the Jags actually pull themselves out of this funk. It's not that long ago they were a contender. It really isn't. And despite all the Jalen Ramsey stuff and everything going on there, it still feels like this team is on the verge of maybe, perhaps, at least a 500 record. So if they can go in and get the win at Denver this week, Jacksonville might not be in that bad a shape after all. Number 22, coming off of a win, moving up 1 spot. They're going to Houston this week. They've outscored their opposition 79-70, and it's the suddenly relevant Carolina Panthers. I didn't expect the Panthers to necessarily play better this week. The thing is this. You can look at Cam Newton being out, and we all know what a big star Cam Newton is. But at the same time, you look at the numbers for Newton those first couple weeks, and they weren't Cam Newton type numbers. So, again, some teams will benefit from a replacement quarterback, even if that quarterback may not have the upside of your prime quarterback. And sometimes it's just you're giving the defense a completely different look. So we'll see if this carries over this week. As I said, they're going to Houston. That's a winnable game for Carolina if the Carolina Panthers are on theirs. So, maybe this season isn't as lost for Carolina as it might have looked a week ago. Number 21, staying in the same spot as last week. And they're going to the Los Angeles Rams. They've been outscored 77-68 overall, and that's Tampa. So Tampa, week 2, they jumped up 10 spots. Week 3, they're staying in that same spot. If they can win at the Rams, that's a pretty strong result. And that's understating it completely. Winning against the Rams would be difficult for them, but you just never know. It's been a pretty unpredictable season overall, other than Miami and the team that's sitting at number 1 that will surprise nobody. But, Tampa, if they want to stay in the hunt, they've got to go into L.A. and beat the Rams in a game that they're going to be huge underdogs in. And I haven't been doing, prediction videos because I try to stay away from prediction videos as much as possible. Number 20, staying in the same spot as last week. They lost this week, and now they're going to Baltimore. They've been outscored 66-49 overall. And that's the Browns. Cleveland has a brutal schedule coming up. Brutal. Starting with going to Baltimore. If they are going to be anywhere near the playoffs, they're going to need to win some games. That right now, when we look at the schedule, we don't see how they're going to do it. So for Browns fans who right now are going, yeah, that's how it is being a Cleveland fan. Yeah, I get it. Because yeah, again, I'm a Bengals fan, so right there with you. But we'll see if the Browns can pull off a monster upset this week. We're kind of overdue for a couple of monster upsets. There's too many undefeated teams. There's going to be a monster upset somewhere. Number 19, dropping one spot from last week, and they're at home against Tampa. This says against Tennessee. They're at home against Tennessee. That's right. They've been outscored 75-60. Atlanta. So again, we're into the middle of the pack. Matt Ryan's numbers are still good, and his throwing numbers were good this week. Everything's great, except they can't get the win. So for Atlanta, frustrating start to the year. You've got a quarterback with good numbers, and you're still losing. So, I know Matt Ryan would trade the numbers for the wins if he could. But yeah, so they drop one spot from last week because there's a team that stormed out of this bottom two rows this week. Number 18, also down one spot. They're 1-2. They're going to play in Atlanta next week. They've outscored their opposition 67-52, and that's Tennessee. Remember that first week? That big win they had? That's done. And now they're in the bottom two rows. But again, if they can pick up a win over Atlanta, even their record, that's going to be a big game for both teams. And for Tennessee, they're trying to stay in the hunt. And for me, I just got a Tennessee jersey, so it'd be nice if they stayed in the hunt so that I'm not wearing a jersey, say at week 6 or week 7, that belongs to a team that's nowhere near the hunt. But anyways, number 17, also dropping their record. And they've been outscored 64-60. They dropped three spots from where they were last week, and now they're going to Miami. Dear Chargers, wake up. Dear Chargers, now is the time. If you lose in Miami, I will be in some ways pleasantly surprised, because the disappointment of seeing them getting close and then losing, it's actually harder to take than seeing them just bomb out early. So if they lose in Miami, I can just lose interest in the Chargers about 4 months earlier than usual. But yeah, so both the teams I cheer for are down. And it's never been a situation where it's like, oh, you have to choose between the Chargers and the Bengals. I think they've met in the playoffs once, I think, and it's not a big deal, because neither of them are usually very, very relevant. And it's sad to say it, but it's true. Number 16, these guys are 2-0-1. They move up 6 spots from last week, and they're at home against Kansas City. So, if Detroit, who have outscored opposition 67-61, if Stafford and the Lions want to show that they're for real, this is the week. They had a good week this week. They pulled off an upset. They move up 6 spots. It will be a much larger jump if they beat the Chiefs. And it is not an easy task to beat the Chiefs and Mahomes. That is a tall task indeed. But for Detroit, you know what? They might just be that team this year that comes out of nowhere, ends up finishing with 10 wins, gets into the playoffs, and then gets destroyed right out of the playoffs. I'm not going to say anything about them being contenders because it's way too early in the year for that. But 2-0-1 is a good start. Much better start than was expected. Number 15, moving up 1 spot from last week. These guys are going to be at home against Oakland this week. And that's the Colts. They've been outscored 71-70. But the Colts still look good overall. Still in a good spot. And if they can win this week at home against Oakland and go to 3-1, they're in good shape to make a run at least a wild card, if not a playoff spot. So 3-1 record would be nice, and it takes the sting out of Andrew Luck retiring. Absolutely. Number 14, moving up one spot from last week, and I feel bad about this. I do. They move up one spot from last week, and they have a bye week this week. They've outscored their opposition 96-54. They're 3-0. And the 49ers have been good, but I've been going by strength of opposition as well. So I haven't just been looking and going, all right, they're 3-0, and I'm going to slap them up here. Now, I looked at a couple of the power rankings, and yeah, there are some people who are putting them right into the top 10, right, just slapping them right up there. And I'm thinking, yeah, but they beat the Steelers, so I like what they did. I like them being 3-0. I do. But I have to go with strength of competition as well. So I want to see something more before I'm going to take the 49ers and jump them up. The one thing that I was thinking looking at the power rankings I did this morning was that next week we're going to see some large movement the other way too. So we'll see. Number 13, staying in the same spot as last week. They're now 2-1. They're at home against Carolina. They've outscored their opposition 68-62. Houston. I like the Texans, not from a cheering for them point of view, but from the point of view that they win close games. They're not usually blown out, and they just seem to be a very good, well-rounded team. So for the Texans, for me, I'm fine with having them at 13, and we'll see how things work out for them from here. Like I said, they're at home against Carolina. Do not take Carolina lightly, even though Newton won't be there, likely won't be playing again. We'll see. We'll see if Newton's cleared to play, and then if they play him, or if they don't, they go, well, we won with the other guy, so thanks, Cam. You go ahead and sit there with your kerchief, and what is that thing? Hey, you just go ahead and sit there and do your hair and stuff, and we'll go ahead and take care of the game out here. You'll be good. Number 12, dropping 4 spots from last week. They're 1-2. They've lost by a total of 78-76 at overall score. I am not putting the Eagles lower than 12th right yet. However, they're at Green Bay. This is the game. This is the season for the Eagles. If the Eagles can go to Green Bay and knock Green Bay off their undefeated streak to start the season, if they can even the record at 2-2, the Eagles jump back into likely the top 10 next week. If the Eagles lose at Green Bay, they're 1-3. I will not be able to justify having them this high. I did not think the Eagles were necessarily going to be, top contenders this year anyways, but that was that, and I know people are going to say, well, they're missing receivers, guys are dropping balls. Yeah, and injuries take place, and when you don't have the depth to cover for them, right? So the Eagles take that drop. Can they come back? Absolutely. They get their receivers healthy. They go to Green Bay. They pull off an upset victory in Green Bay. They're right back into relevancy, and they're 2-2. But they have to win next week. That's the key. Number 11, 2-1. And these guys have the New York Jets have a bye week this week too. That's the other team. Was the Jets. The Jets and the 49ers have a bye week. Number 11, staying the same spot as last week. They're at home against Minnesota this week. They've outscored their opposition 50-39, and that's Chicago. If they can beat the Vikings, yep, they'll be top 10. The Vikings will take a bit of a drop. The Bears, and it's so weird to say it, but questions have come up now about, well, offensively, are they going to, and that was what I said at the start of the year, this is, and I understand that over the last few years that the Bears have had a really good offense. But just traditionally, the Bears have been built around defense and capitalizing on turnovers. And it hasn't been as much about who's snapping the ball and who's under the center. It's always seemed to be around, and there's always been a really strong run. Usually been a pretty strong running game with Chicago as well. So we'll see whether or not that offense continues to pick up against Minnesota. They may get that chance. We'll see. So I still have them at 11. A lot of guys stayed in the same spot. Although in the top 10, only one team stayed in the same spot as they were last week. So there you go. Number 10, moving up 2 spots from last week. They're 3-0. They've outscored their opposition 66-47. And suddenly people want Buffalo. They want Buffalo to win. There are a lot of people who want Buffalo to win. And they're at home against New England. And there's some fingers crossed that maybe they will defeat the New England Patriots. I know. The odds of them beating New England are seemingly slim. I even heard some crazy thing yesterday. Somebody said, hey, Tom Brady's human. He's going to get older, and it's going to happen. Eventually, the Patriots aren't going to be the best team in the NFC or AFC East. Yeah, we've heard that before. I don't think Brady's human, so I just completely reject that on the surface of it. So the Bills will have a chance next week to rocket up this power rankings if they can pull off a huge upset over the New England Patriots, who've made it look easy so far because their schedule's been pretty soft. And the funny thing is that if New England does defeat Buffalo, they're still going to be perceived as having a soft schedule. Number 9, dropping 3 spots from last week. They're at home against Cleveland this week. They've outscored the opposition 110-60 in their 3 games, and that's the Ravens. So the Ravens, bit of a down week for them this week. I do expect them to come back and win next week. I would think that Cleveland would be a game they have absolutely zero problem getting up for. And so we'll see. We'll see how Baltimore does this week. They make that small drop this week. Number 8, moving up 1 spot from last week. These guys are going to be at Chicago. They've outscored their opposition 78-47, and that's Minnesota. So the Vikings back into the top row this week after dropping out of the top row last week. And the game between them and Chicago is going to be huge for both teams. If Minnesota wins and goes to 3-1, you've got that game that basically 1 game lead over Chicago. If Chicago wins that, the road gets a little tougher for for Minnesota. The road is impossible for Miami. There is no road for Miami. It's been burned. It's been replaced by velociraptors, T-Rexes, and clowns. That's what's replaced it. That's what's on the road for the Miami Dolphins. It's not a road. It's gone. Number 7, dropping 2 spots from last week. They're 2-1. They've been outscored 79-76 overall, and that's the Seahawks. I get a funny feeling that this coming week they're at Arizona. I feel an upset coming. Arizona's down here, Seattle's up here, and you know what? I would not be surprised to see an upset win for Arizona. Arizona's due for one, and Seattle with a loss would definitely drop down into like the 12-13 area on the board, maybe further down. But we'll see. I still believe in Russell Wilson. I do, and I still think that the Seahawks are a pretty good team. The overall score is not where you'd like it to be. But, so I've dropped them down. We'll see next week whether or not they avoid that upset that I get the feeling is coming. I have a funny feeling Arizona could pull that off. And you're just due for one. There has to be. These teams can't all stay winless. They just can't. You can't have this many winless teams in the league. Some of them are going to get wins this week, at least a few. For instance, the fact that the Bengals and the Steelers are against each other, so somebody's got to win. That's the tagline you want on your game, right? Somebody has to win tonight. Number 6, we're into overtime, and nobody's... Oh, wait, no, not necessarily. You can have a tie. Yeah, right? Yeah, these teams are probably going to tie, so they'll both be winless. They both avoided the stranglehold of a victory. Number 6, they've been outscored 82-72. But they jumped 4 spots this week because I got to say, New Orleans responding very well to an injured quarterback. And pulling off a victory this week. That's impressive. Straight up, that's impressive. And we'll see whether or not they're able to keep that going this week as they're at home against Dallas. So I would expect a 2-2 record. But that being said, maybe with the fact that New Orleans is at home, maybe they can keep this going, go to 3-1, and have people talking about them as maybe being contenders when Drew Brees returns. Maybe they play better without him till he gets back, and then everything just, everything's coming up for the Saints. People would like to see that happen because of what happened last year and how their season ended. So they'd like to see a good ending for the New Orleans Saints this year. Most people. Most. Not all. Most. Number 5. Moving up 2 spots from last week. They're 3-0. From here on, everybody's 3-0. They've outscored their opponents 58-35, and that's Green Bay. The Packers, they're the Packers. This Aaron Rodgers, Green Bay, they've allowed 35 points in 3 games. It's impressive. It's been an impressive run so far for Green Bay. As I said, they're at home against Philly this week. Can't take your foot off the gas at all. The Eagles should be desperate, and it should make for a really good, hard-hitting game. And 2 teams that wear green when they're at home. So it's the battle of the greens. Number 4, dropping 2 spots from last week. Yes, dropping. 77-49 is the overall score for them. The Rams won this week and didn't really impress me in that win. I watched a lot of that game, and I came out of that going, yeah, they won, but... And it didn't feel as much like they won as the other team lost. So it's one of those things where I say, okay, they're still undefeated, but the teams that are behind them, who are still undefeated as well, probably playing better football right now. The Rams, as they go into this week at home against Tampa, they have to watch it because Tampa Bay coming in at 1-2, the desperation and all that wonderful stuff, could very well lead to the Rams having some issues. We'll see if that is in fact the case. But for me, the Rams, I dropped them down to 4th. I was tempted to drop them down behind Green Bay, but I thought, nah, that's a little bit too reactionary. I'm going to drop them down behind the other 2, though. At number 3, moving up 1 spot from last week, is Dallas. They've outscored the opposition 97-44, and Dak Prescott is kind of fantastic, which, of course, anybody watching this knows. For the Dallas Cowboys, they are a contender, and they get to cement that when they go to New Orleans this week. If they can go in and put a beating on New Orleans, go to 4-0. Yeah, contender status is official, and then it's just we're going to wait for the playoffs now. The Cowboys definitely look like they're on their way to maybe a 13-3, 14-2, 12-4 levels type season. And good on them. As much as I may not be a Cowboys fan, and I'm not, it's been an impressive run so far. Number 2, moving up 1 spot from last week, they're 3-0. They've outscored their opposition 101-64. They're going to Detroit. Beware the Lions, Kansas City. That being said, Mahomes has just been lights out. He's got, 10 touchdowns, 1,184 yards. I think it's 1,184 yards. Is that real through 3 games? Dear Lord. It's not fair. It's not fair to the rest of the league, but Kansas City, maybe this is going to be their year. Maybe this is going to be the year where the Kansas City Chiefs win a Super Bowl. Crazy things happen. The problem is, the team ahead of them that's going to Buffalo, they've outscored their opposition 106-17. And yes, when I say opposition, I mean they've been playing 3 other teams. They haven't been challenged yet. They haven't even been close to challenged yet. They've allowed 17 points in 3 games. And now they're going to Buffalo to play against the Bills. We'll see if that's a challenge for them. Tom Brady, I don't think he's human. I don't think he ages. And I don't think that's going to change. But we'll see. So there you go. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.